Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev ki jai. Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Vishnu Vishnupad Ashitara Shatashmar Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Vishnu Vishnupad Ashitara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Vishnu Vishnupad Ashitara Shatashmar Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Mahabhagavat Srila Bhaksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Vishnu Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Navgaudiya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhattadasha Raghunath Shara Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shigor Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट विराट गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिसे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकायै तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवो विनेदुस्तं सर्वभूत हृदयमुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुरेप्सतम्। नष्टप्रयेष्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवत्सेवया भगवत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणन्तिकम्। भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। भज श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranam, Surup Manjari Didi, Madhavi Didi, Gargaraj, Seshwari Mataji, whoever's watching on the Gaudiya Kirtan live group, and Indira Mataji. Oh, and Prajumna Prabhu and Mantramurti Mataji. Dandavat Pranams to all of you. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to read, I might just finish this chapter and end, or I might also read the first two verses of the second chapter. I don't know yet. Feeling a bit weird this morning. Actually, last night I did something kind of stupid. At 12:30 last night, I ate a bunch of mangoes. And I already had like a really heavy dinner. And so those mangoes, yeah, it was a bad decision. I just was afraid those mangoes were going to go bad. That's the only reason I ate them. But yeah, this morning I'm feeling really dizzy and I don't know, stomach's weird. Rup Manjari and Raseshwari Mataji are watching on YouTube right now. Okay. So, what did we read last time? Is this mic working? Yes, it is. Okay. So, Parikshit, he asks about Priyavrata. How could Priyavrata enjoy household life and still perfect his Krishna consciousness? Mukta Sanghas, liberated souls, they don't absorb themselves in family affairs. And then Shukadev Goswami responds, obstacles cannot obstruct one's absorption in bhakti. Priyavrata could neither welcome Manu's requests to rule nor reject that request. So because he couldn't, he wasn't able to accept Manu's request to rule the world, or the universe, Brahma descends. And then he's praised by the demigods, and he meets Priyavrata, looking at Priyavrata with a compassion and a smile. Then Brahma's reasons to convince Priyavrata. Brahma says, the jivas are dependent on the Lord's order in accepting bodies and conducting their lives. Even liberated persons accept the Lord's order. A self-controlled person is unaffected by family life. Therefore, seek shelter of the Lord and conquer your senses. And then this is what we'll read from here on. Priyavrata accepts Brahma's request. Thus being instructed, Priyavrata, lowering his head while thinking himself inferior, accepted and respectfully carried out the order of Brahma, the Guru of the three worlds. Brahma was then worshipped by Manu. Priyavrata and Narad also looked upon Brahma with no tinges of resentment. Then Brahma returned to Satyaloka, which is indescribable by material words and mind. His desire accomplished by Brahma, Manu, and with the permission of Narad. Manu felt relieved. His desire accomplished by Brahma, Manu, with the permission of Narad. Manu established his son in ruling the entire earth. Oh God, I read this song wrong. As I said, I'm like really dizzy right now. So, his desire accomplished by Brahma, Manu, with the permission of Narad, established his son in ruling the entire earth. Thus Manu was relieved from the most dangerous, poisonous ocean of material desires.
Link. Now Shukadev answers question 1. How did Priyavrata enjoy household life? Priyavrata fully engaged in worldly affairs by the order of the Lord. Yet, he always thought of the Lord's lotus feet, which are the cause of liberation. Although he was completely freed from all material contamination, he ruled the material world just to honor the orders of his superiors. Note, a devotee is not afraid of anything, provided he has the opportunity to execute the Supreme Lord's order. So, Priyavrata, he married, this is a table, he married Bahishmati, the daughter of Vishvakarma. We'll read about it here, and then we'll look at the chart. So, Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 arbuda, that's 11 times 100 million years, and conquered his enemies by the mere sound of his bow, drawn by 2 strong arms. He greatly loved his wife, Bahishmati. By her feminine behavior by her feminine behavior of dressing herself, walking, smiling, and glancing about, she increased his joy. Thus he appeared lost in the feminine conduct of his wife, but actually he was a great soul. Oh God, sorry, I got confused because I thought this is, okay, so let's go back a little bit. Priyavrata married Bahishmati, the daughter of Vishvakarma, and she gave birth to 10 sons who were equal to their father in qualities and have the names of Agni. And then, I guess from them came 7 sons: Āgnidhra, Idmajiva, Yagyabahu, Hiranyareta, Gritaprishta, Medhatiti, and Vitihotra. And then, okay. I'm a bit confused. Anyways, and then I guess he had another 3 sons, Kavi, Mahavir, and Savana. Oh, yeah, okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so he had 10 sons, but 7 of them were, these 7, and they all, ruled the 7 continents. But these 3 sons, Kavi, Mahavir, and Savana, were brahmacharis, and they entered the Paramahansa ashram. And there's a note here. In that Paramahansa ashram, Kavi, Mahavir, and Savana controlled their senses, and they fixed their minds on the lotus feet of Vasudeva, became advanced in pure devotional service, and could directly perceive the Lord, who is a supersoul, realized the qualitative non-difference between themselves and the Lord. Okay, they realized. Okay. So that was through his first wife, these 10 sons, 7 rulers, 3 brahmacharis. And then Bahishmati also had one daughter named Urjasvati. And I guess she married Shukracharya and they gave birth to Devayani, I guess. And then Priyavrata, later on, he married a second wife. And she gave birth to 3 sons, Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. And these are the Manus of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Manvantars, respectively. Okay, so Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 arbuda and conquered many enemies by the mere sound of his bow, drawn by 2 strong arms. He greatly loved his wife, Parasmati, anyways. So Priyavrata once became dissatisfied with the movements of the sun god around Mount Sumeru, as he lit up half the surface of the earth, while the other half remained dark. Priyavrata followed the orbit of the sun god on a brilliant chariot, and thus fulfilled his desire of making night into day. He could perform such wonderful activities by dint of his worship of the Lord. Note, by the power of yoga, Priyavrata had two bodies, one as a king and one as the sun. Priyavrata followed the sun. What? Okay, anyways. Priyavrata followed the sun, not to compete with the sun, but to give happiness to the inhabitants of earth. Because of this arrangement, in months like Jeshta, hot months, the sun made by Priyavrata was cooler than the moon. And in the cool months, like Margashisha, the sun made by Priyavrata was warmer than the other sun at dawn and dusk. Okay, well, that's trippy. I mean, he became the sun? No, I mean, he made a sun? I didn't even understand that when we read that yesterday. Okay, and so this is what we read up to yesterday, 31, right? The impressions of Priyavrata's chariot wheels created 7 islands and 7 oceans on Bhumandal. He gave these islands to his sons to rule. Okay, so let's go there. What time is it? Oh my God. Yeah, let's just read to the end of this chapter today. Oh, you're not seeing the table? That's strange. Okay. Anyhow, let's just continue today's reading. Okay, 31. No, we read 31 yesterday. When Priyavrata drove his chariot behind the sun, the rims of his chariot wheels created impressions that later became the 7 oceans, dividing the planetary system known as Bhumandal into 7 islands. Yeah, okay, we read one. So, Jambu Plaksha Shalmali Kusha Kronsha Shaka Pushkara Sangyas Tesham Parimanam Purvasmar Uttaro Yatha Sankyam Dviguna Manena Bahi Samantata Upaklipta. The names of the islands are Jambu, Plaksha, Shalimali, Kusha, Kronsha, Shaka, and Pushkar. Each island is twice as large as the one preceding it, and each is surrounded by a liquid substance, beyond which is the next island. Purport. The ocean I said continents before. I was wrong. I meant to say islands. Sorry. The ocean in each planetary system has a different type of liquid. How they are situated is explained in the next verse. Oh man, that's a long one. Ksharodekshu Rosada Suroda Gritoda Kshiroda Dadi Mandoda Shuddodha Sapta Jaladhaya Sapta Dvipa Parika Iva Bhyantara Dvipa Samana Ekaikashyena Yatanu Purvam Saptasvapi Bahir Dvipeshu Pratak Parita Upakalpitasteshu Jamvadishu Barhishmati Patir Anuvratanat Majan Āgnidhra Yagyabahu Hiranyareto Grita Prishta Merathiti Vitihotra Samgyan Yatha Sankhyanikaksmin Ekam Evadhi Patim Vidadhe. The 7 oceans respectively contain salt water, sugarcane juice, liquor, clarified butter, milk, emulsified yogurt, and drinking water. All the 9 islands are completely surrounded by these oceans, and each ocean is equal in breadth to the island of and each ocean is equal to in breadth to the island it surrounds. Maharaj Priyavrata, the husband of Queen Barhishmati, gave sovereignty over these islands to his respective sons, namely Āgnidhra, Idmajiva, Yagyabahu, Hiranyareta, Grita Prishta, Medhatiti, and Vitihotra. Thus they all became kings by the order of their father. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is to be understood that all the dvipas, or islands, are surrounded by different types of oceans, and it is said herein that the breadth of each ocean is the same as that of the island it surrounds. The length of the oceans, however, cannot equal the length of the islands. According to Viraragavacharya, the breadth of the first island is 100,000 yojanas. 1 yojana equals 8 miles, and therefore the breadth of the first island is calculated to be 800,000 miles. The water surrounding it must have been the same breadth, but its length must be different. Is there a chart for this? Let's see. No. Well, maybe there is. I just have to look through the other parts. Anyhow. 34. Tu hitaram chorjaswatim namo shasane prayachad yasyam asid devayani nama kavyasuta. King Priyavrata then gave his daughter Urjaswati in marriage to Shukracharya, who begot in her a daughter named Devayani. Okay, yeah, we already read that in the chart. Okay. Naivam vida purushakara urukramasya pungsam tarangri rajasajita shargunanam chitram vidura vigata sakra datatita yanamadeya madhuna sajahati bandham. My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Purport. Shukadev Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit about the activities of King Priyavrata, and since the king might have had doubts about these wonderful, uncommon activities, Shukadev Goswami reassured him. My dear king, he said, don't be doubtful about the wonderful activities of Priyavrata. For a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is possible, because the Lord is also known as Urukram. Urukram is a name for Lord Vamandev, who performed the wonderful act of occupying the 3 worlds with 3 footsteps. Lord Vamandev requested 3 paces of land from Maharaj Bali, and when Maharaj Bali agreed to grant them, the Lord immediately covered the entire world with 2 footsteps. And for his 3rd step, he placed his foot upon Bali Maharaj's head. Shri Jayadev Goswami says, Chalayasi vikramane balamar bhutavaman paranakane rajanita jana pavan keshavadrita vamana rupa jai jagarisha hare jai jagarisha hare jai jagarisha hare. All glories to Lord Keshav, who assumed the form of a dwarf. O Lord of the universe, who takes away everything inauspicious for the devotees. O wonderful Vamandev, you tricked the great demon Bali Maharaj by your steps. The water that touched the nails of your lotus feet when you pierced through the covering of the universe purifies all living entities in the form of the river Ganges. Since the Supreme Lord is all-powerful, he can do things that seem wonderful for a common man. Similarly, a devotee who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord can also do wonderful things unimaginable to a common man, by the grace of the dust of those lotus feet. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore teaches us to take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame pavam buddho kripaya tava para pankaja stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya. I just want to check everything's going good. Is there no sound? Huh. Okay, anyhow. O son of Nanda Maharaj, I am your eternal servant, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Lord Chaitanya teaches us to come in touch with the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, for then there will undoubtedly be all success. Because of the material body, every living entity in material existence is always disturbed by Shadaguna, 6 whips: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, invalidity, and death. Furthermore, another Shadaguna are the mind and 5 sense organs. Not to speak of a sanctified devotee, even a chanda, an outcast, who is untouchable, is immediately freed from material bondage if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Sometimes caste Brahmins argue that unless one changes his body, he cannot be accepted as a Brahmin, for since the present body is obtained as a result of past actions, one who has in the past acted as a Brahmin takes birth in a Brahmin family. Therefore, they contend, without such Brahminical body, one cannot be accepted as a Brahmin. Herein it is said, however, that even Vidura Vigata, a Chandal, a 5th class untouchable, is freed if he utters the holy name even once. Being freed means that he immediately changes his body. Sanatana Goswami confirms this. Yata kanchanatam yati kangsyam rasa vidhanata tata diksha vidhanena dijatvam jayate nrinam. When a person, even though a chandal, is initiated by a pure devotee into chanting the holy name of the Lord, his body changes as he follows the instructions of the spiritual master. Although one cannot see how his body has changed, we must accept, on the grounds of the authoritative statements of the Shastras, that he changes his body. This is to be understood without arguments. This verse clearly says, Sajahati bandham, he gives up his material bondage. The body is a symbolic representation of material bondage according to one's karma. Although sometimes we cannot see the gross body changing, chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord immediately changes the subtle body. And because the subtle body changes, the living entity is immediately freed from material bondage. After all, changes of the gross body are conducted by the subtle body. After the destruction of the gross body, the subtle body takes the living entity from his present gross body to another. In the subtle body, the mind is predominant, and therefore, if one's mind is always absorbed in remembering the activities or the lotus feet of the Lord, he is to be understood to have already changed his present body and become purified. Therefore, it is irrefutable that a chandal or any fallen or low-born person can become a Brahmin simply by the method of bona fide initiation. Raseshwari Mataji, is that so? I don't actually understand. I was saying, is there a different platform? Oh, yeah, I can. Well, let's see. Let's see if I can make the print bigger. No, this is the biggest I can make the print. The text is too small for you? Yeah, this is the biggest it goes. I mean, I can try looking here. Let's see. 36. I can try making the text bigger this way. But then I have to scroll sideways. That's a little bit of it. Yeah, I think we have to kind of do it like this. Otherwise. Oh, now it's fine? Okay, good. Did I read this? No, I don't think so. Sa evam aparimita balam parakrama ekada tu devarshi charananu shayananu patita guna visarga sansar genat nirvritam ivatmanam manyamana atma nirveda idam aha. While enjoying his material opulences with full strength and influence, Maharaj Priyavrata once began to consider that although he had fully surrendered to the great saint Narad and was actually on the path of Krishna consciousness, he had somehow become again entangled in material activities. Yeah, even though he was actually on the path of Krishna consciousness and surrendered to Narad, he had somehow become again entangled in material activities. Thus his mind now became restless, and he began to speak in a spirit of renunciation. Purport. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1.5.17, it is said, Taktva sadharmam charanam bhujam harer bhajan apakvo tapatet tato yadi yatra kvabhadram abud amushyakim Kuvarta apto bhajatam sadharmata. One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage. Yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. If one somehow or other comes to the shelter of a great Vaishnava, takes to Krishna consciousness because of sentiment or realization, but in course of time falls down because of immature understanding, he is not actually fallen, for his having engaged in Krishna consciousness is a permanent asset. If one falls down, therefore, his process might be checked for a certain time, but it will again become manifest in an opportune moment. Although Priyavrata Maharaj was serving according to the instructions of Narad Muni, meant for going back home back to Godhead, he returned to material affairs at the request of his father. In due course of time, however, his consciousness for serving Krishna reawakened by the grace of his spiritual master, Narad. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 6.1, Suchinam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Brashto Bijayate. One who falls down from the process of bhakti yoga is again offered the opulence of the demigods, and after enjoying such material opulence, he is given a chance to take birth in a noble family of a pure Brahmin, or in a rich family, to be given the chance to revive his Krishna consciousness. This actually happened in the life of Priyavrata. He is a most glorious example of this truth. In due course of time, he no longer wanted to enjoy his material opulences and his wife, kingdom, and sons. Instead, he wanted to renounce them all. Therefore, after having described the material opulences of Maharaj Priyavrata, Shukadev Goswami in this verse describes his tendency for renunciation. The words Devarshi Chanushayana indicate that Maharaj Priyavrata, having fully surrendered to the great sage Devarshi Narad, was strictly following all the devotional processes and regulative principles under his direction. in regard to strictly following the regulative principles, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Dandavat pranamastan upatita. By immediately offering obeisance, dandavat, unto the spiritual master, and by strictly following his directions, the student becomes advanced. Maharaj Priyavrata was doing all these things regularly. As long as one is in the material world, he has to be under the influence of the modes of material nature, guna visarga. It is not that Maharaj Priyavrata was freed from material influence because he possessed all material opulences. In this material world, both the very poor man and the very rich man are under material influences. For both wealth and poverty are creations of the modes of material nature. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.27, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. According to the modes of material nature we acquire, the material nature gives us facility for material enjoyment. Aho asadvanushtitam yad abhiniveshitavaham indriyar avidya rachita vishama vishayada kupe taralam alam amushya vanitaya vinoda mrgam mam dhig iti garhayam chakara. Well, I actually understood some of that. Thus the king began criticizing himself. Alas, how condemned I have become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment, which is exactly like a covered well. I have had enough. Alam. I am not going to enjoy any more. Just see how I have become like a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. Because of this, I am condemned. Purport. How condemned is the advancement of material knowledge can be understood from the behavior of Maharaj Priyavrata. He performed such wonderful acts as creating another sun. When I started, I had a different screen, and then it changed. That's interesting. I don't know why. Anyways, so Maharaj Priyavrata performed such wonderful acts as creating another sun, which shines during the night, and creating a chariot so great that its wheels formed vast oceans. These activities are so great that modern scientists cannot even imagine how such things can be done. Maharaj Priyavrata acted very wonderfully in the material field of activities, but because he was dealing in sense gratification, ruling his kingdom and dancing to the indications of his beautiful wife, he personally condemned himself. When we think about this example of Maharaj Priyavrata, we can just consider how degraded is the modern civilization of materialistic advancement. Modern so-called scientists and other materialists are very satisfied because they can construct great bridges, roads, and machines. But such activities are nothing comparable to those of Maharaj Priyavrata. If Maharaj Priyavrata could condemn himself in spite of his wonderful activities, how condemned we are in our so-called advancement of material civilization. We can conclude that such advancement has nothing to do with the problems of the living entity entangled within this material world. Unfortunately, modern man does not understand his entanglement and how condemned he is, nor does he know what kind of body he is going to have in the next life. From a spiritual point of view, a great kingdom, beautiful wife, and wonderful material activities are all impediments to spiritual advancement. Maharaj Priyavrata had served the great sage Narad sincerely. Therefore, even though he had accepted material opulences, he could not be deviated from his own tasks. He again became Krishna conscious, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Neha Vikrama nashasti pratavayo navidyate salpam apasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In devotional service, there is no loss or diminution. And even a small service rendered in devotional service is sufficient to save one from the greatest danger. Bhagavad Gita 240. Such renunciation as Maharaj Priyavrata's is possible only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, when people are powerful or when they have a beautiful wife, a beautiful home and material property, they become more and more entangled. Maharaj Priyavrata, however, having been completely trained by the great sage Narad, received his Krishna consciousness in spite of all impediments. Paradevata prasada digatatma pratyavamarshena my God, that was a long word. Putrebhya imam yatha dayam vibhajya bhukta bhogam cha mahishim mritakam iha saha mahabhibhutam apahaya swayam nihita nirvido hridi grihita hari viharanubhavo bhagavato naradasya padavim punar evanu sasara. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrata reawakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons. He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification. And his great and opulent kingdom, he gave that up also. He completely renounced all attachments. His heart, having been cleansed, became a... His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastimes for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great saint Narad. Purport. As enunciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Shikshashtakam, Cheto Darpanamarjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvarpanam. As soon as one's heart is cleansed, the blazing fire of material existence is immediately extinguished. Our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna as Krishna himself as he himself advises. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. This should be our only business. One whose heart is not clean cannot think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But if one can once again place the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his heart, he very easily becomes qualified to renounce material attachment. Mayavadi philosophers, yogis, and jnanis tried to give up this material world simply by saying, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This world is false, there is no use of it. Let us take to Brahman. Such theoretical knowledge will not help us. If we believe that Brahman is the real truth, we have to place within our hearts the lotus feet of Shri Krishna, as Maharaj Ambarish did, Savayamana Krishna Padara Vindayo. One has to fix the lotus feet of the Lord within his heart. Then he gets the strength to be freed from material entanglement. Maharaj Priyavrata was able to give up his opulent kingdom, and he also gave up the association of his beautiful wife as if she were a dead body. However beautiful one's wife, and however attractive her bodily features, one is no longer interested in her when her body is dead. We praise a beautiful woman for her body, but that same body, when bereft of a spirit soul, is no longer interesting to any lusty man. What is it? Never mind. What is it? A necrophiliac? Never mind, that's gross. I'm not going to. Maharaj Priyavrata was so strong by the grace of the Lord that even though his beautiful wife was alive, he could give up her association exactly like one who is forced to give up the association of a dead wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagarisha kamaye mama janmani janmanishware bhavatar bhaktir ahaituki tvai. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. For one who desires to advance in spiritual life, attachment to material opulence and attachment to a beautiful wife are two great impediments. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide. Therefore, if anyone desiring to cross beyond material nescience must, by the grace of Krishna, be freed from attachments to women and money. When Maharaj Priyavrata became completely free from these attachments, he could again peacefully follow the principles instructed by the great sage Narad. Tasya hava ete shloka. Priyavrata kritam karma ko nu kuryad vineshwaram yonimi nimnarakaro chayam gnan saptavaridhin. There are many famous verses regarding Maharaj Priyavrata's activities. I guess this is one. No one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead can do what Maharaj Priyavrata has done. Maharaj Priyavrata dissipated the darkness of night, and with the rims of his great chariot, he excavated 7 oceans. Purport. There are many excellent verses, famous all over the world, concerning the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. He is so celebrated that his activities are compared to those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes a sincere servant and devotee of the Lord is also called Bhagavan. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is called Bhagavan, and Lord Shiva and Vyasadeva are sometimes called Bhagavan. This designation Bhagavan is sometimes conferred upon a pure devotee by the grace of the Lord, so that he will be very quickly esteemed. Maharaj Priyavrata was such a devotee. Bhusangsthanam kritam yena sarid girivanadivi simacha bhutanirvrityai dvipe dvipe vibhagasha. Okay. To stop the quarreling among different peoples, Maharaj Priyavrata marked boundaries at rivers and at the edges of mountains and forests, so that no one would trespass upon another's property. Purport. The example set by Maharaj Priyavrata The example set by Maharaj Priyavrata in marking off different states is still followed. As indicated here, different classes of men are destined to live in different areas, and therefore the boundaries of various tracts of land, which are described here as islands, should be defined by different rivers, forests, and hills. This is also mentioned in relation to Maharaj Prithu, who was born from the dead body of his father by the manipulation of great sages. Maharaj Prithu's father was very sinful, and therefore a black man called Nishada was first born from his dead body. The Nishada race was given a place in the forest because by nature they are thieves and rogues. As animals are given places in various forests and hills, men who are like animals are also destined to live there. One cannot be promoted to civilized life unless one comes to Krishna consciousness. For by nature, one is destined to live in a particular situation according to one's karma and association with the modes of nature. If men want to live in harmony and peace, they must take to Krishna consciousness, for they cannot achieve the highest standard while absorbed in the bodily concept of life. Maharaj Priyavrata divided the surface of the globe into 7 different islands, so that each class of men would live peacefully and not clash with the others. The modern idea of nationhood was gradually developed from the divisions made by Maharaj Priyavrata. Pomam divyam manusham cha mahitvam karma yogancham yaschakre nirayao pamyam purushanu priya. As a great follower and devotee of the sage Narad, Maharaj Priyavrata considered hellish the opulences he had achieved by dint of fruitive activities and mystic powers, whether in the lower or heavenly planetary systems or in human society. All his opulences he considered hellish. Purport. Srila Rupa Goswami has said that the position of a devotee is so super excellent that a devotee does not consider any material opulence worth having. There are different types of opulences on earth, in the heavenly planets, and even in the lower planetary system, known as Patal. A devotee, however, knows that they are all material, and consequently he is not at all interested in them. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Param Drishta Nivartate. Sometimes yogis and jnanis voluntarily give up all material opulences to practice their system of liberation and taste spiritual bliss. However, they frequently fall down because of artificial renunciation of material opulences. Because artificial renunciation of material opulences cannot endure. One must have a superior taste in spiritual life. Then he can give up material opulence. Maharaj Priyavrata had already tasted spiritual bliss, and therefore he had no interest in any of the material achievements available in the lower, higher, or middle planetary systems. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th canto, 1st chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. Okay, let's just read this introduction to chapter 2 and then we'll stop. The activities of Maharaj Āgnidhra. In this chapter, the character of Maharaj Āgnidhra is described. When Maharaj Priyavrata went off for spiritual realization, his son Āgnidhra became the ruler of Jambudvip in accordance with Maharaj Priyavrata's instructions, and maintained his residence with the same affection a father feels for his sons. Once, Maharaj Āgnidhra desired to have a son, and therefore he entered a cave of Mandara mountain to practice austerity. Understanding his desire, Lord Brahma sent a celestial girl named Purvachiti to Āgnidhra's hermitage. After dressing herself very attractively, she presented herself before him with various feminine movements. Since Āgnidhra was naturally attracted to her, the girl's actions, expressions, smile, sweet words, and moving eyes were fascinating to him. Āgnidhra was expert in flattery. Thus he attracted the celestial girl, who was pleased to accept him as her husband because of his mellifluous words. She enjoyed royal happiness with Āgnidhra for many years before returning to her abode in the heavenly planets. In her womb, Āgnidhra begot 9 sons: Nabhi, King Purusha, Harivarsha, Ilavrita, Ramyaka, Harinmaya, Kuru, Bhadrashva, and Ketumala. He gave them 9 islands, with names corresponding to theirs. Āgnidhra, however, his senses unsatisfied, was always thinking of his celestial wife, and therefore in his next life he was born in her celestial planet. After the death of Āgnidhra, his 9 sons married the 9 daughters of Meru, named Merudevi, Pratirupa, Ugradamshri, Lata, Ramya, Shama, Nari, Bhadra, and Devaviti. Okay, so we'll continue with text 1 tomorrow of chapter 2. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Giridhari, Shishi Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtara Shatashmar, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Srila Gurudev ki jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtara Shatashmar, Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtara Shatashmar, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtara Shatashmar, Srila, sorry, did I do Palm Gurudev? Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupar Ashtara Shatashmar, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Mahabhagavat Srila Gorkshadas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shar Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sirup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshada Vrinda ki jai. Namachay Srila Haridas Thakur. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandal Vaja Mandal, sorry, Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Padatta Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavascha Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams. Oh, and my clock is 5 minutes fast. That's just so that I'll never be late for anything, but it's actually 8 o'clock right now, so I didn't go over time. All right, Haribol. See you all tomorrow.